All right, today I'm going to be talking about what makes an indie game successful and what are the patterns that we're starting to see in the modern era of indie games. Now we're well past the, blockbuster successes of like Stardew Valley and Minecraft and that era of indie games. We've gotten to a point where the market is pretty well saturated, if not oversaturated, and so it's very hard for indies to shine through all that fog and actually get eyes on their game and get it to be popular. So just wanted to talk about some of the successes that I've seen and some of the patterns that I'm starting to see in the more recent era of indies and kind of where I see this all culminating. So big picture, I still see that with AAA failing as hard as it's doing right now, I kind of see that AA is going to be stepping up to that AAA level and kind of replacing a lot of those studios, as well as indie coming up and becoming more of a force in AA, where a lot of the indie studios are going to grow into AA studios, possibly even straight through to AAA studios down the road. And we're talking years down the road here because it's going to take a long time for AAA to fail and start seeing major studio closures and major holes form in that industry where AA can step in. We are seeing that somewhat right now with some of these AA studios stepping up to the plate, but I think it's going to take a long time for that to really kick in. So this is talking way down the road, years down the road, but I do see that happening, and I kind of think talking about the successful indie games and where indie is kind of heading in terms of their successes, maybe that'll help you guys figure out what games are worth playing, or if you're a developer, what's worth trying to put into your game, trying to make. So without further ado, let's first get into the gameplay here. Today, the gameplay is Mirthwood. This is recently launched. There's a 10% launch discount out now, and also there's a free demo. So if you want to just check it out, there's a demo out there you can play. Totally worth at least checking out that. And like I said, there's 10% off if you want to actually buy it. Go check it out. It's actually the first game we're going to talk about today. So the link is going to be in that description down below, so you can check it out there. So without further ado, let's talk about some indie games. Now, like I said, the first game is Mirthwood, and the reason why I want to talk about Mirthwood is because from what I can tell, it's a very small studio, very low budget, small team. And what they did was they kind of made sure that it was a very efficient operation. You can kind of tell from the construction of the game, like they didn't go, full high poly 3D world. They didn't dump a whole bunch of money into that. They had some good painterly style pixel artists and simple animation and simple mechanics in terms of the overworld view, like what we're seeing right here. Let's say right here. So fairly simplistic, fairly easy to work with in terms of making what looks to be a very detailed and populated world without putting in a ton of effort into 3D assets and all that mess. So it's a move they made to make the game they wanted to make without investing a ton of money into 3D assets and building this overly complicated world. And it's very comprehensive. It's very competent in its offering, and I love the art style of this. So kudos to the 2D artists that kind of put all this together, and to the whole team for making this as nice of an experience as it is, and as tight of a gameplay as it is, because that's the other aspect of this, is that it has to be a really competent game. It has to be very well polished, very well architected, very well built. And aside from a few bugs I've heard in the reviews, this game is very much that, and that makes a big difference in terms of successes and failures. Is how well the game is crafted. And like I said, this is a fairly well crafted game. It is a fairly well crafted, fairly well artistically built game as well, in terms of like the style and how comprehensive it is and how cohesive it is. So those all go towards making this a very popular game and a very successful game. Now, success is a very relative term here. And this is one of the lower the lower numbered games that we can have here. So like the player count is 2,200 max. Let's see, even further down, you can see like the wish lists really didn't take off until just before release. And now we're starting to see that hockey stick kick in. But this is a sign that this could very well go viral and get a lot more people playing it than they have now. So in theory, we could potentially see these player numbers go up from here. And that's something that's kind of unique to indie because they don't have the huge marketing budgets to get the full number of eyes on this that they could if they were a AAA studio. So with AAA, I mean, for the most part, the marketing has already gone out to everybody that could potentially have wanted to buy that game well in advance of launch. So anybody that would buy that game would be buying it either as a pre-order or on launch or shortly after. There is that subsequent, well, I'll wait and see how the day one patches pan out, as well as some of the people that are waiting for it to go on sale down the road. But those are few and far between compared to the initial set of sales. So, AAA, your sales are going to hit really hard on day one and drop off really, really quickly after that point. So that's not really the case with indie because indie, you don't necessarily get those day one launch sales as strong as you normally would, and you build up to that sale figure over time because as you get sales, you can invest more in marketing and you can start putting some of that money back to work for the game and trying to get more eyes on it, to get more potential customers to see the game and even know the game exists, to make a judgment call whether they want to buy it or not, because you don't even have that market saturation in the beginning to know how many people could potentially buy this game, let alone capture that market in any reasonable fashion. So that's kind of what we're seeing with Mirthwood here, is that at least according to the player counts, I think you're going to see this either oscillate between that 1,200 and 2,200 player count for a while, as existing users drop off and new users replace them, or you're going to start seeing it increase as more new users are coming in than are dropping out. Because again, this is an indie title. It's not a particularly long game, from what I understand, but it is fairly involved. It's not like a 100+ hour RPG, but it isn't like 2 hours either. So it is involved enough to get people in depth. But like I said, they can play it after in the course of a few days if they're really into it. I think you can actually knock this out in a weekend. If you're of the mindset to, if you don't have anything else going on that weekend at least. So there are players that have dropped off since launch, and there's new players coming in. So I think that's what we're really seeing here. That said, I think, like I said, it could go viral. It could not. It could just maintain what it's got for a while and continue on. But this hockey stick, especially this tail end of this hockey stick, tells me otherwise. I think we might see some significant movement in this in the near future. But that's Mirthwood, and like I said, I think that this is an example of an indie team that knew what they wanted to make and didn't cut corners, but also didn't go extravagantly crazy with like cutscenes and all this other crazy stuff. They made the game they wanted to make, and they kept those costs down, but not compromising that game that they wanted. So it's a good example of like shoestring budget and making things work. Now they did have a publisher for this. So this is one of the few that did have a publisher, and that does change the equation a little bit. I think without a publisher, you'd probably be seeing like half these numbers, if that. And that does make a difference too. So I think those are the elements that made up the success of Mirthwood. And like I said, it doesn't. Time will tell how successful it is, but I think that they've at least made their money back, or they're very close to it at this point. So that would be a success in my book. At least breaking even is better than losing money. So it's better than AAA, I guess. So that's what we're gonna say about Mirthwood. Now, the next real big concept that I wanted to put out there is a small team with viral success, which could very well be Mirthwood, but it's too early to tell. And the example of that I'm going to use is called web fishing, and web fishing is also a new game. hit a very, very viral streak. And, from launch, it just rocketed up, and now it's been oscillating between this 10 and 20,000 player count consistently, which again tells me that there's new players coming in, there's old players dropping out, and they're continuing to cycle through that revolving door. The other thing about web fishing is that it is fairly well streamable. It's fairly popular on streaming, Twitch with 22,000. Now, there are games in this list that are way bigger than that on Twitch, but 22,000 is not half bad, considering the player counts, considering the popularity, considering the estimated owners here of about 500,000. And this is a very successful game. I would consider this a game that's gone viral. And I think the aspects that make this go viral over, let's say, Mirthwood, is Mirthwood was a single player. This is multiplayer. This is co-op. And it's also has that streamability, that ability to be entertaining while being streamed, especially as a group. Like if a bunch of streamers get together and they're all streaming the same game and fishing together and doing all that, that is definitely a popular thing to do on Twitch or on all streaming platforms, really. But we only have numbers for Twitch here in Steam DB, so that's kind of what I'm using as a baseline. And web fishing, I think the multiplayer makes a big difference because being able to play with your friends kind of boosts this in terms of popularity. And this is another developer, very small developer. Did not go nuts on costs. I mean, it's a low poly game. It is 3D, but it's low poly, so it's kind of in the same category as Mirthwood, where they didn't go, blowing all their money on cutscenes and high poly models and complex animations. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. But they made the game that they wanted to make, and they didn't compromise on the mechanics. They compromised on the cost of the art. And you can go cheap with art and still have a good outcome. And both of these games I would consider to be a good outcome. I mean, this is kind of PlayStation style graphics, but it works, and it's a good style, and it's a consistent style, and consistency is really key in your art style. So that makes the world of difference in this. But you can see it's basic, it's simple, it's not overly complicated. The animations are not complex. You don't have a million different animations. You don't have all these cutscenes. You don't have all that mess. It's fairly straightforward. And the same thing with Mirthwood. Mirthwood was the same idea, that painterly style with 2D. It's also very comprehensive and very consistent across the board with their art style. So maintaining that consistency is key. And specifically for web fishing, what I think made it go viral is definitely that multiplayer aspect, which then carries over to the streamability aspect of it as well. So that is kind of the second pillar, is the viral success in a small team. The third pillar is going to be another interesting one. This is going to be a popular genre where you make a very competent offering in there, a very solid game, a very interesting game, a very artistic game in a very popular genre, in a very crowded space. And the example for that is going to be Halls of Torment, and this is another game that I've had gameplay footage on. I've played this quite a bit, but this is one made by Chasing Carrots. It's also published by them, so they didn't have a publisher. They had massive success in their early days. In early access, the peak player count was 26,000. Nowadays, at launch, it was 9,400. So, they got the bulk of their sales in early access, and then at launch, it's just officially out there. But again, very streamable. Twitch stats, 35,000, even higher than web fishing. And a lot of owners, you're looking at close to a million owners, according to these estimates, at least. I think VG estimates is a little low here, and probably Play Tracker is a little high. So, 800, 900,000 is within the realm of possibility there. And you can see at early access, that's where they started to gain their follower count. And even at release, there wasn't that much of a boost. But this particular hockey stick right here, this jump, is really what made them as popular as they are, is what gave them their success. That post-early access, pre-launch bump in their numbers allowed them to, convert a lot of that to sales and make this a popular game. And like I said, I think the streamability aspect has an important role to play here. But this is a situation where you've got a very crowded space. I mean, this is a horde survival game. This is like a bullet hell style game. There's a lot of games out there like that. There's a lot of games that are exactly like Halls of Torment in terms of their mechanics. But Halls of Torment is a very competently made game. It's very well polished, and it has a really interesting art style. You know, it's reminiscent of Diablo, and I think that's what drew people to this game over others. Is very having that Diablo-esque aspect to this game attracted people to it a lot more than other games in the genre. The other aspect is that, you know, their trailer straight up shows the gameplay. It does not. It is very revealing of what you're going to get in this game. It's very clear how this game works and how it plays. And because it's a competently made game and it looks good and it acts good in the trailer, that drew people in to buy it as well. So having that good trailer, having a good art style, having all of these things that set you apart from the other games in the same genre, especially in a crowded genre like this, that makes the world of difference. And that's why, you know, Halls of Torment is more successful than, say, other bullet hell, you know, horde survival style games. And, you know, this is another one. This is a single player game. It's not multiplayer. So multiplayer doesn't have an aspect in this. It's just a matter of, you know, making an interesting looking game that looks like a lot of fun and is a lot of fun. So that made a world of difference in this. I don't even think they ever had a demo for this. It was just out there. It just got released and that was that. I don't think there was ever a demo. It did do early access, but no demo. So the demo wouldn't even be a factor in this. So that's Halls of Torment. That's kind of your crowded genre, but something that stands apart in an already crowded genre, in a popular crowded genre. Next up is going to be the last pillar, which is more focused on the multiplayer and streaming aspect. I know I touched on it earlier, but I've got 2 games to support this one. And the idea is, you know, multiplayer games and things that look good on streaming platforms, things that are easy to stream, that are popular to stream. Those 2 things actually set you apart in terms of having word of mouth or indirect word of mouth in terms of streaming, because you've got people that are watching the game through a streamer, you know, somebody that they're subscribed to. So if you attract the streamers, that's where you get more eyes on your product, on more eyes on your game, and get that interest going. Whereas with multiplayer, you know, it's a matter of, well, my friends are all playing this, and so I should probably get it and play it with them. So it's that word of mouth spreading faster because it's a multiplayer game as opposed to a single player game. So those 2 things do have a big impact on things, and that kind of changes the aspect of things. Now the first game that I'm gonna talk about is Project Zomboid. Now this is a multiplayer game, been out for quite a long time, and you can see that, like, since about 2022, 2023, they've been pretty consistent on their user numbers. So for as old as this game is, because you can see it's been around since like 2014 in early formats. So this has been around for quite a long time, and they've been collecting user stats on it, but it really didn't jump off until about 2022? Yeah, about 2022, and it's just kind of been a huge popular success since then. But again, very popular with streaming. 123,000 on Twitch, all-time high. A lot of owners for this. Just shy of 10 million. You know, 8 or 9 million, I would say, just based on these 3 estimates. And you can see also this follower count has just been consistently going up over time. And this is post-launch, so, you know, it's just been going up and up and up. And that's kind of why they've seen success like they did, is because it's been around forever, but that you know, since 22, that's when it really took off. And yeah, it's one of the rare successes that are quite this popular on Twitch, and you know, has that multiplayer component to really boost it up. Another one that I'm going to look at is Phasmophobia, and this is kind of a different take on that multiplayer aspect. So not only is it multiplayer, but it's very novel multiplayer. It's 4-player online co-op, psychological horror. It's very, very streamable, because if you get, like, a group of people in there streaming this game, it is a whole lot of fun to watch. And that's reflective of their numbers because they have double what Zomboid had, 256,000 all-time peak on Twitch. Much more in terms of owner estimates, at least around 15 million. We could probably estimate about 15 million. It's straight in the middle between these three. And then the user stats are a little less than Zomboid, but they're still very good. I mean, the lows are, 12 to 20,000. And then they have these spikes, and the spikes kind of even that out and give you that boost every once in a while. They've been pretty consistent in terms of their spikes. Now, this is a newer game, came out in 2021, or maybe it was 2020. No, it was 2020, end of 2020. So relatively newer game. Been around for, 4 years now, but very competent game, very capable game, and very well made. And it has that that multiplayer aspect that really set it apart. And I think that those 4 pillars are really some of the keys on how indie games become successful. Now, I know this is kind of a weird title for me to be doing. I know I have a few developers that watch this channel, and I guess this would be good for you indie devs out there, but also for the gamers, just to have an idea of why these games become successful, so you can kind of look out for them, and when you see these successes come out, you can start, keeping tabs on those studios like Kinetic Games. With this kind of success in their pocket, they could easily, push this forward and make their second game way more involved, way better, way higher production quality, and start working themselves from that indie title or indie developer status into a AA developer status, and then maybe even continue on to AAA. And I think you're going to see studios do that. So, now's the time to kind of pay attention to these small studios that are hitting these huge successes, because over time you're going to start seeing them grow if they're doing well, if they're putting that money back in and reinvesting it smart. Then you're going to start seeing some of these indie devs become AA devs, then become AAA devs, and you're going to see those AA devs become AAA devs as well. I might do a video on that later. But I really wanted to start with indie just because it is the most number of games, it's the biggest pool out there of games, of developers, of people trying to make a success. So it's kind of that, succeed or die kind of mentality. There's a lot of failures in indie studio as well as successes. So pointing out the successes, kind of giving you an idea of why they succeeded. I don't know. It's just something that maybe you can keep in your back pocket, and as you start seeing indie titles come along, you can start looking for these markers to see if it's going to be something that kind of catches your eye, as well as a whole bunch of other people's eyes, or it's going to flop miserably. So you can kind of start judging those things in those terms to see what might be coming down the road. Now, obviously, just straight up looking at SteamDB for trending stuff, you can see trending stuff here. I've gone here just to get ideas of new games to play as well. It's not great for that, and I would wish to find a tool that's more capable for gamers to find new stuff. And obviously Steam has their own discovery queue and all that. I've never found that it works terribly well. I think there's a need to be filled there where somebody can have a better mechanism for game discovery, especially in the indie space, given how crowded it is. But I don't know. That's neither here nor there. I guess, it is something I've been working on, but it's not even close to release yet. So maybe somebody will beat me to it. Maybe I'll beat everybody else to it. We'll find out. But yeah, that's what I got for you guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was informative and interesting. And if you like these kind of videos, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you guys later.